why don't you start by just giving a brief background of what you do and why you do it and what you did before, and then we can just jump into the conversation.
Cool. Um, yeah, so I'm Zvi Benson Tolson. Um, Currently, I'm uh, leading the Berkeley Genomics Project, which is a very small nonprofit, which is focused generally on um, supporting the field of reprogenetics, which means um, basically any sort of biotechnology that it's like assisted reproductive technology, such as IVF, that helps parents make genomic choices for their children. In other words, um, somehow influence what genes their own children will get.
Mm,
The currently available technology is embryo screening, which is like IVF plus you sequence your embryos and then check for monogenic diseases or um, polygenic prediction of traits, which can include disease risks, but also include other things like potentially intelligence.
mm,
Um, and generally, I'm very interested in methods for humanity to upgrade its own intelligence, um, which is a big topic and a fraught topic and um, somewhat sci-fi, although it's starting to be not sci-fi. Um, and
mm,
broadly, I think this is just a very good thing in general for humanity, despite the various like things to worry about. Um, but also, in particular, I think it is one way that we can improve humanity's chances of not being destroyed by runaway artificial general intelligence, which I
mm.
think is pretty likely to happen to us in the next 20, 50, 100 years. Like the somewhat the default seems to be that it's very, very difficult to stop people from doing AI research because of financial and social and other incentives.
Mhm.
And then if anyone actually makes something that's smarter than humans, it will probably kill everyone. So I do not want that to happen. That's why I'm doing what I'm currently doing. And also before what I'm currently doing, I was trying to do technical research more directly on that problem,
Mhm.
like figuring out how it might be possible to, might be even technically, theoretically possible to make smarter than human AI that like ends up well for us, like doesn't kill everyone and kind of does stuff that we want it to do or does stuff that's good for humanity. And basically that technical problem just seems extremely, extremely hard. I mean, obviously, know, I can't know whether it's like merely way too hard for me and too hard for anyone else so far versus, but only slightly too hard versus like extremely too hard and would take 1,000 years or 100 years.
Mhm.
But it seems more towards the very, very hard end rather than like, we'll solve this in 5 or 10 years or something. It doesn't seem like that to me. It seems extremely difficult. So I
Can you
kind of gave up. Yeah.
can you can you give a little bit of an understanding of why you think this? Maybe based on your experience, at Miri and in AI development, and what makes you feel that this is uh, an outcome, and if you think it's inevitable. Um,
Um, well, so first of all, why is it the likely outcome? I mean, basically, I mean, I'll give I'll try to give like a short summary. It's sort of people come in with different assumptions about what intelligence is, what it means, how it works, how you could make it, what are the consequences. So different people have different follow-up questions, but the short summary is something like the way that we are actually making AI and the way that will probably and what will probably continue to be the way that we make AI is we don't know what we're making. We're kind of growing a bunch of different aliens in a lab, and you're just growing you're trying to grow like as many different kinds of aliens as you can because you want to have different aliens to select from. So you
right.
grow a bunch of random like different aliens. They're not human or anything like that. They're just whatever aliens you know how to grow randomly. And
Hmm.
then you find the ones that are really, really good at doing a whole bunch of tasks, like predict text, generate images, do stuff on the internet, play games, whatever. So you find the aliens that you grew without knowing what you're doing. You find the ones that are really, really good at doing tasks, and then you just give them more resources and like see if they can keep doing more tasks. And there's no particular reason that this finds aliens that are nice or like humans or care about humans.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a reason that you are strongly selecting for aliens that are very, very good at making stuff happen in the world. That is literally what you're selecting for.
Mm-hmm.
And if you succeed at this selection process very well, you find an alien that's powerful enough to like beat humans at our own game in any way, including stuff like taking over the world.
Right. So what do you think is the reason that we're doing this? I mean, there is the obvious reason is sort of, well, to build a tool that will help, very obvious tasks like the tasks that are inputting it, or to help, you know, progress or whatever, however you want to define that. But what would be your understanding of why we are creating this, other than money and power, I guess, which might be the answer.
Yeah, I think it's a really important question and a difficult question, and I thought a little bit about it, but I have not had like the time and attention to dig really deep. I have like poked other friends um, that I have who are maybe like a little more in touch with the people doing that research, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just it's hard to tell. Yeah, I think a big reason is money. You
Funny.
can get paid to do this research. You could potentially make millions of dollars.
Right.
There's also like, status is always not quite the right concept, I feel, but something like status, like people look at you as doing something exciting or something important or even something dangerous. Like that can be a kind of um,
Mm-hmm.
status, not necessarily in the sense of a hierarchy, but recognition, being socially very socially real. Like I'm a real social entity if I am doing this research.
And that's more of an on an individual level, where it's impressive to people if you're an AI engineer at whatever firm, or the AI company itself. There's a prestige, power, money aspect, of course, if you can market your AI to the US government. um, so would you say that it's almost sort of a disparate motivation on the individual level, and everyone's sort of out for themselves? Would you say that that's an accurate way of thinking about how this is developing?
um, I truly don't know. I don't know. It's a good question, but I don't know.
Mm.
I'm more like I guess in approaching the question of why is this happening? Why are we as a society doing this? I'm pretty not advanced. I'm pretty like at the stage of like I still want to just think of ideas and gather data. Like, yeah, it could be money, it could be status. It could also be
Mhm.
the thrill of the technology. It could be just the community. It's like a bunch of cool, very technically competent,
Mhm.
interesting scientists or intellectuals coming up with cool ideas that we can implement. That's fun. It's fun to be around that.
Right, right.
Like whatever the leading edge of tech in SF is at any given time is like an exciting thing to be part of.
Mhm.
Um, and then yeah, as you mentioned, like I mean, at least the stated reasons. Maybe it's just because it's an easy justification, but the stated reasons are like abundance, like solve medical
Yes.
science problems. Yeah.
Right.
Um,
Okay. That makes
are you trying to ask like at a more societal level, like why are
No,
we?
I think it was just it's just interesting to think about, I guess, on an individual and societal level. I think I think of it more as if there is this doomsday idea, which there is a lot of skepticism around that idea that AI is, going to take over and kill everybody. Um, Understandably so. But if there is this idea, then why are we doing it? But I think that maybe that train of logic isn't how people approach it, because people just assume that that isn't going to happen. Which is a question. What would you say? I mean, there is a lot of skepticism around the idea that AI will take over. I think maybe because people don't want to think about that outcome because it's scary. Um, but
Well,
what would you say?
I think it's a bit of a strange situation because I think if you read or if you look into what a lot of the leaders of these companies are saying, and a lot of the researchers, they do say that there's like a large chance of killing everyone, basically. Like you get different numbers, but it could be 5%, 10%, 20%. Like they just say there's a 10% chance that this, if someone succeeds at making this technology, it will kill everyone. Um, so I don't know I don't know I don't know where to go from there. If you say that there's a 10% chance that the technology you're developing will kill everyone, and then you're still trying to develop it, like they might say like, well, other people will do it too, and so I'll invest more in AI alignment or AI safety, and so it's better if I do it. It doesn't help if I don't do it because other people will do it, but maybe if I do it, I'll do it better.
Mm-hmm.
I
Right.
mean, Sinclair's razor is always in the background, of course. So Upton Sinclair said, "It is difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it."
Right.
Um,
Right.
so that's always in the background here.
Right, because there's other motivations that are sort of before it kills everybody that are, I guess, more pressing. Um, that's interesting. So, would you say that there is inevitability? First of all, can we define what it is? It's artificial general intelligence. Can you explain what that is exactly?
Um, it's hard to give like a mechanistic definition because we don't understand what intelligence is or what like real thinking, real creativity is. Um, like we don't understand what we are, or how we think, or how we solve problems. But I can kind of just point at humans and say, somehow humans are very, very powerful, or very, very strong, like very good at manipulating the world, for
Mm-hmm.
better or for worse. Um, whatever that thing, whatever that is, the engine that makes us able to do that. What if you had a machine that could do that, and then what if you had a machine that could do that even more so, more
Mm-hmm.
quickly, more powerfully, more competently? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I guess it's
Um,
hard to define because it's unclear because it doesn't exist yet in some way.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that humans are generally intelligent, but we're sort of, I mean, as the joke goes, we're the dumbest possible thing that can be having this conversation. Um, so, like, I mean, we can like list a bunch of stuff that we do. Like, we look at data and extract patterns. We imagine scenarios and then figure out what would happen in these scenarios. We backchain from like a vision of what we would like to see, and then we think about what would be the preconditions of that and figure out sub goals and figure out tools that we can construct that will make it easier to get what we want.
Mhm,
We remember things, we go over past experiences to extract lessons, we share, we communicate information, we compress information in order to remember it, in order to analyze it, in order to share it. Um, all these, we search for possibilities that we haven't seen before by using our imagination. All these things go into the general capability of manipulating the world. Um,
and
yeah,
this is something that AGI would do, but just better in theory,
yeah.
right?
With like faster, with using fewer resources,
Mhm,
more forcefully, more like surprisingly. Like humans are very surprising to chimps, I would imagine. Um,
right.
like if you're a chimp, you're hanging out and
Mhm,
almost everyone around you just like does the normal thing of like walking around or flying and eating, using claws, using um, teeth, using legs. But then humans are in a metal can flying through the sky 100 times faster than anything else, or
right.
you point a thing at you and then you die mysteriously. Yeah,
And chimps' fate in some ways is entirely in the hands of humans.
that's right.
Right. Um, do you so there's skepticism about the inevitability of the existence of artificial general intelligence as you've as we've tried to define it. Do you think it's inevitable? Do you think that this is the wrong way to look at it as inevitable or not? Um, is it helpful or harmful, I guess, to see its inevitability as in that, in 10, 20, 30 years, it will happen? Or is this the wrong way to frame the question?
I think it can be right and wrong, or there's, yeah, I think both. So it is important to see the ways that make the things that make it be kind of inevitable. Like it's important to not just hope that people won't do it because
Right.
they are doing it. They are doing it. They say they want to do it. They're probably going to keep doing it. And there's like strong forces that make people want to keep doing it, like
Mhm.
economic incentives, social incentives, etc. Um, so that's some degree of inevitability, and that's important to keep track of. On the other hand, yeah, I would not want to be um, despairing in various ways. Like, first of all, people should generally keep living their lives and being like good to each other and happy and so on. And then also, there are things we can do. We like it is not actually even just like even from like a realist or pessimist
Mhm.
perspective, it's
Mhm.
not really inevitable because there are cases where technology can be where society can decide to not develop technology. Um, I've not really not gotten to do it like a deep dive into this, but some examples would be human cloning. So we do have the technology to clone animals. There's like a service you can go clone your pet dog or something. But as far as I know, there have never been human clones made, and biologists generally quite strongly balk at that. I mean, partly because it is genuinely quite unsafe. Like you would probably make a very like deformed baby, basically. But also, there's just a very, very strong taboo, as well as it being illegal, of
Yes.
course. Um, and so this taboo slash scientific consensus slash legal regime is pretty effective. And then similarly, I mean, it's easier to ban nuclear bombs, and sometimes countries do get nuclear bombs despite a moratorium on nuclear proliferation. But broadly, like I feel like the situation with nuclear proliferation is like fairly good. It's like
Mm.
mostly countries don't get nukes. Mostly countries don't gain nukes in the past few decades or something, I think.
So, what solutions do you see as a society that you think should be implemented on some level to delay or prevent um, what the worst scenario is, essentially?
I mean, I'm a pretty extremist. I mean, not violent or anything, obviously, but pretty extremist in terms of regulation, both like international, federal, like formal state regulation as well as social regulation. So so I would call for international treaty to ban AGI research. This is like difficult to define. There's a whole lot of like things to work out about how you implement what does that even mean and how do you enforce it. But
Mm.
that would be the policy recommendation is somehow ban research that is kind of like I mean one like kind of functional definition which might not be good enough. It would be something like ban research into AI that is domain general or
Mhm.
not domain specific. So like you want to work on your AI chess engine, fine. You want to work on your AI protein folding engine, awesome. That's good. That helps medical science. It's probably not too unsafe. It really depends on the actual. The problem
Mhm.
is this is not a real definition of AGI because you could do um, research that does contribute in the long run to to making AGI only just in the scope in the like context of domain specific research. You could do that. So this isn't a perfect definition, but this could help. That would be one idea. Anyway, so international ban, national regulation, um, which would get a whole lot of pushback, obviously, but that would be the idea. And then also social. What's that?
I said it'd be very difficult to pass something like that.
Yeah. And then also I would say like academics should um, take these issues very, very seriously. And like either, like if you like either, what's a nice way of saying like have a spine basically. Like either, um, if you really disagree that this is like a serious risk, have a debate with someone with an expert who says it is a serious risk,
Mhm.
um, or like maybe step back and like defer to if there's a consensus saying that it is a huge danger, then you should defer to that. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, basically, what I would hope for is people would just basically tell their students, don't do unscoped AGI research. Like
Right.
algorithms research, fine. Like, yeah, make cool algorithms to do lots of cool stuff that humans want in a scoped way.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess that's assuming academics have that kind of influence over students. Um, but I was reading your work and you were talking about confrontation worthy empathy as a solution. Can you say more about that? I thought it was a pretty interesting idea.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's not something I've actually like tried to implement, so it's largely theoretical, or I've kind of done little bits of it in other contexts in my life, and so it's just speculation. But the
Mm-hmm.
idea would be to engage with people who are somehow contributing to AGI research. So that could be the actual researchers themselves, whether that's like lower level employees or younger people, or whether that's like a project leader or even like a leader of a company, um, or funders, or regulators who are, um, or whoever's like pushing back against regulation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for any of these people, you'd want to um, understand them deeply enough, understand why they're doing that deeply enough that you can like uh, I mean,
Intervene.
yeah, well, yeah, I'm struggling here because I haven't thought about this recently very much. I mean, basically, you want to understand why someone is doing something to a deep enough level where you are able to assist them in, like, if I have an opinion that you're doing something bad,
Mm-hmm.
but you're doing it for some reason. Like either one of us. Sorry, this I have to.
No,
I'm
no.
gonna. I have to say a few paragraphs.
Yeah, yeah. Say
I'm
it.
forgetting. Okay,
Good.
so um, if you're doing a thing and I don't like that you're doing a thing, there's at least two possibilities. One possibility is that we have a really fundamental like difference of values.
Mm-hmm.
Like you might just think I'm disgusting and you want to kill me, and there's no resolving that. You just think that as like a fundamental fact, and you want to kill me. I can't argue with you. Like maybe I could threaten you back or negotiate or something, but like it's a very fundamental conflict. Um, so I'm just excluding that. I'm just hoping that that's not the case. Or
Okay.
I mean, if it is the case, you have to face that. But
Right.
I think very often that's not the case. If that's not the case, then what's going on is that we have very different um, intuitions or information or context. And if that's the case, um, what often happens is that basically I will try to convince you to not do the thing that I think you should not do, but I will not understand everything about why you're doing that. And because I don't understand why you're doing it, um, like you have a thing that's really valuable to you, um, and the only way that you currently know how to get that thing is by doing this action that I don't like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if I'm saying don't do that action, the way that you would process that naturally is saying not only don't do this action, but don't get this thing that you value. Because
Mm-hmm.
currently, the way that you know how to get this thing that you value is to do this action.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so if I say don't do this action to you, I'm also saying don't get this thing you value. That's not what I mean. I just mean don't do this action. If there's a thing that you value, and by hypothesis, we don't have like a truly fundamental conflict, what that means is there's some other way you could get this thing that you want. Um, so, for example, if you're doing AGI research, um, maybe what you want is to work on really fun, challenging technical problems with a bunch of cool people. In that case, there's lots of other places where you could do that, and then I would want to like have some of those at the ready and make them appealing and easy for people to join, as opposed to going to do AGI research. Um, if
Right.
there's um, Well, I could go through more examples, but yeah,
Right. Well, I
there's
mean,
go ahead.
it seems to me that what it really is trying in some way to change. It's interesting you approach it from such a human individual level, because I do want to talk about what it means to actually affect the input of the AI specifically. But I think that what you're really talking about is sort of changing almost the goalposts of what we deem as successful or interesting or cool as a society, and almost sort of, if ideally you want success or to be cool or to do the most interesting research, you're basically saying, okay, there's other ways to do that than to invest and continue to produce something that could kill everyone in your in this theory. But I mean, the in a realistic way, I think, it does seem, how many individuals would you have to, I guess, pinpoint in order to get the outcome that you want? I think it does seem to be more of a sort of a structural, societal structural of like what rewards that we give people for interesting work or for specific institutions that are, you know, we deem to be like a success in some way. And in this case, it's big tech right now. Um, so I guess in a realistic way, you it would be a kind of a larger structural change. Is That's just what I'm hearing.
No, that's
Is
yeah,
that right?
that's no, that's interesting and a good point, and I'm probably not tracking that enough. Um, I mean, the confrontation more the empathy thing. Yeah, I sort of rambled. I mean, to finish that thread, like I would want to be able to. I started rambling about like ways to help find different ways of like help someone have different ways of getting the thing that they want. But even if we can't easily solve that, I would say like before that, you want to be able to at least help someone think clearly about what they're doing. Like
Right.
you could imagine like an example would be like suppose like a young clever person like she's gonna go work at a cigarette company doing advertising to you know the blunt way of saying it is like trick teenagers into getting addicted to cigarettes
Right.
because that makes money. Um, she would probably have like all sorts of ways of thinking about it that it's not that like she is sort of giving something is giving people something that they want. She's just she's just responding
Mhm.
to the market incentives. She's just doing what there's money for. I don't know. You could have all sorts of like rationalizations or just like ignoring what you're doing, ignoring the impact. Um, I am. This is like hypothetical, or this is sort of theoretical, but I feel like sometimes when I in lots of different contexts, I feel like when I am talking to someone who, and also applies to me,
Mhm.
if I'm sort of deluded about something. So both me and other people, when someone's deluded about something, or rationalizing or ignoring something, there are ways that you can like bring it up. There are ways that you can like think through it and give them like feedback, like help them figure out what they actually would really want to be doing. Um, but it's hard. It's a lot of work. It's like empathy, and it's some particular flavor of empathy where you're like genuinely on their side in a sense, um, meaning you're not necessarily on their side for doing whatever they decide to do, but you're on their side for having like a deep like faith basically that there is a version of the world that is good for everyone, including them,
Right.
where they're not doing some big harmful thing.
It
Um,
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be, I if this is a, as kind of dangerous, and the outcome is everyone dies, then it's, in some ways connecting people to some level of purpose in their work. But I guess as a society, what questions should we be raising at large in your view of how to almost, I guess, reset a value system or prepare? And you might not have an answer to this, but I know we spoke in a prior conversation about this idea of societal hope, which is, it's just an interesting thing because, when we're talking about tech development, this idea of how do we cultivate hope as a society is not a common question that will come up. But it's just fascinating to me that there is this ultimate connection, just because AI brings this existential quality to a lot of this, to any kind of solution that we would try and find as a collective in some way, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Um, yeah, I mean, one relationship between hope is and AI is that, I mean, this is very speculative, and I feel it's a little weird to be psychoanalyzing people, but I guess at least it's vague who I'm talking about. Um,
Yeah, and we, if
like,
you can move on, if this is a,
no, no, it's okay. I'm just talking through it.
yeah, that's fine.
So like, yeah, like one thing is like, I imagine that some people going into AI have some degree of, I just don't, I sort of like want to not pile on bullying them basically, but like I would say like,
Mm,
or give an uncharitable presentation, but basically like something like a somewhat antisocial kind of reactance to society where,
mm,
I don't think this describes everyone or even half of like people doing AI research, but like but I do think that there's some kind of strain like this where like a
mm,
significant chunk of people or a lot of people to some extent are kind of like, society is dumb and doesn't know how to get good outcomes. It's hard to work with people. People will interfere with like cool things that I'm doing or cool things that people do, like technology.
mm,
Um, and so therefore, it's good to be a, um, somewhat disruptive, like, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Like unilaterally, make some big technological advance that people will, people will hate me for it while I'm doing it, but then later they'll see how amazing the benefits are.
mm,
Um, there's some of this attitude, and then like I have a lot of empathy for this, and I feel it myself somewhat. Where there's just like a lot of ways to have your faith in society broken, especially as like a young smart kid,
mm,
where like school is just not set up for you. Like school is set up to kind of like focus on the kids who are almost getting like meeting statewide test, um, quotas or whatever, but not quite there. And then if you make those kids go up a little bit, then your school gets more funding or something like that. But so you're sort of ignoring the kids who are way behind, and you're ignoring the kids who are way ahead. Um,
mm,
and then, um, just in general, like smart kids have their own, uh, society not being super set up for them necessarily.
mhm,
Um, and so, and generally society has like a lot of issues, like justice is not, there's a lot of injustice, and therefore that's like another way that you can have your faith broken.
mhm,
Generally, yeah. So generally, the thing about hope is like, do I care about the world, or do I care about humanity, or the long-term humanity, like
right,
long-term future of humanity? Well, I care about it if it feels like there's this thing which is humanity or my society or civilization or something, which is on the whole like trying to do a good thing for the very long term, and I have faith in this. Like I don't need to track every single thing and have my own models of every single consequence of everything, and I just assume that broadly society is trying to do something good, and therefore if I just like help society and be productive, whatever, then this contributes to
mhm,
something good in the long run.
mhm,
If you have your faith broken in society, where like society is doing dumb things, like they should obviously do, like repeal the Jones Act or whatever, so we can have shipping, or like
mhm,
allow houses to be built, or, something something about education or whatever. You can list any number of grievances, like society doing something dumb, and then in particular society doing things that are unjust, where it's like you cannot have a like a good collective consciousness must be just.
Hmm.
Um, and so if you see things, if you repeatedly see injustice, you're like, there is no collective consciousness. There's nothing to have hope in. And so, what do you do in that context? One thing to do is to do more like unilateralist kind of things, which can trend into recklessness.
Like creating something that could end society in some way, or I guess if it could, I can see how the logic would be that it doesn't matter in some ways if it's interesting.
Yeah, the gamble would be worth the risk if you don't care about, if you don't feel like you're a part of a society that's worth protecting, or yeah.
Right. And I guess without generalizing it, I mean, it, how how does this relate to alignment, or how do who's putting in the value input, I guess, into AI generally? I mean, it's a bleak outcome to think that everyone working on AI fits this idea. I mean, I think it's a generalization, but um is there any kind of interest in safety, I guess, on the level of the development other than just to create an AGI?
Um,
Makes sense.
you're asking whether the people who are currently trying to make it also care about safety,
Yes,
or
right. Or also care about preventing uh doomsday outcome in some way.
um, I mean, certainly, like logically, you would think that they would. I don't know how to
Or what
interpret
efforts that you know of are
it's a very it's weird. I don't know how to answer. Well, so the many the companies have significant. Um, so OpenAI has, or at least it had, an alignment team.
right.
Alignment team meaning researchers who are paid to do research on alignment. Um, Anthropic does a lot of alignment research. Um, I don't know as much about XAI, but um, Ilya Sutskever, yeah, these companies will do something that is called AI safety research or AI alignment research. From my perspective, it is very much not the sort of thing that could work or like responds to any of the knowledge that's built up in people who were doing alignment research in the research community that was working on this for longer. So it's hard to interpret that because it's like maybe you just don't know about it or you don't or you think it's not good, but like it mostly looks like it's hard to tell whether someone is bad at something or they don't care about it, basically.
Mhm. Right. That's interesting. But yeah, it's interesting that there's sort of, it seems, two ways of intervention, which is sort of, well, there's the societal intervention, but then there's an individual intervention, which is how do you get people to stop producing or developing AI in sort of an individual, um, like awards model, which has to do with the way we as a society kind of view this development. But then there's also sort of a policy perspective, which is that you can just have legislation that slows this sort of research down. Um, but I think a lot of people also focus on, maybe people who aren't like myself, who aren't so aware of the minute technological development aspects of it, are, well, we'll put in enough input or values or safety to make it not happen in this kind of doomsday way. Um, is that making sense? I'm just trying to piece out, I guess, if there is this ultimate outcome, which I think there's skepticism around, but I agree that people who end up talking about this development, there is of course an doomsday scenario. Um, how do we piece out the ways that we could, prevent this or slow it down? But it's just interesting that the conversation just gravitates towards how do you intervene on sort of a very individual level. Um, just an observation.
Mm. Wait, sorry. When you say intervene on, you're saying that like my attention seems to go toward like convincing individual people to not do this research.
Yeah, or not like on a one-to-one basis, but from a more human to human, "Why are you trying to destroy humanity?"
Yeah.
perspective, right.
Yeah, well, yeah, because I feel like that should work. It doesn't seem to work that well, but it seems like it should work.
You should hope. But this does seem related, to what you're doing now, which is, um, I guess, a bit controversial. Can you just say a little bit? I know we said in the beginning about about why you feel genetic engineering is sort of an answer.
Um, yeah, well, so let me just, as a framing preface, when I'm talking about reprogenetics, aka human germline genomic engineering, when I'm talking about this like current and future technology, um, there's my background motivation, which is like that I think it will probably help decrease existential risk to humanity from AI. But I'm always like in my role as doing anything in the fields, um, in whatever small role I have, um, I uh, take like I feel I take on a different responsibility, which is to make the technology be um, beneficial to humans, people, society, members of our civilization, whether or not you buy anything about AI. So in other
Mhm,
words, if I'm in terms of like
mhm,
how I'm presenting this to society or scientists or parents or whoever, I'm not saying you should do this because AI.
right,
It would be it would be a very different conversation. I might work on something totally different if I thought that you couldn't make a
right,
good case for it without the AI thing.
yeah,
But that said, my main background motivation is to prevent humanity from being destroyed from AI. And I think this helps. The reason I think it helps is um, largely because it can be used like for individual like parents who want to, if they
mhm,
believe it's a good choice on behalf of their future children, they
mhm,
can make their future child be um, smarter, potentially much smarter. And I think that that would help. There's a different benefit, which is that reprogenetics is itself potentially a very powerful medical technology, broadly construed, basically because it can make future kids healthier.
mhm,
Um, and that kind of like argues against the one of the main justifications of AI, which is like um, we need more medical science to make people healthier.
mhm,
Um, it doesn't argue that strongly against it because there's still 8 billion people alive today who will get sick and die. Um, and reprogenetics cannot actually like cure or prevent aging.
mhm,
Um, but it's like some amount. Anyway, the main thing is the increased like cognitive capacity um, for kids of whatever parents choose to make those genomic choices. The reason I think that that's good is several reasons, but broadly, the very general reason is just mostly um, humans want to do good things. Humans want good outcomes, and if we have the capability of getting really, really good outcomes, we will get the good outcomes. If we don't have the capability of getting good outcomes, we might do risky stuff like make AGI.
mhm,
Um, a different way of saying this is like humanity, you know, there's a lot of ways in which we are not, in which you could say the problems that we face are not about needing to solve more technical problems, but rather needing to be wiser, have better values, be healthier psychologically or emotionally, whatever. And I basically agree with all of that. Maybe we have a quantitative disagreement, but qualitatively, I agree with all of that. But I would say in those domains and in other domains, actually, we are bottlenecked on difficult ideas. For example, social media makes people crazy. What do you do about that? I don't know. I feel like no one has a good answer to this. And
AI.
it's like, oh, AI, maybe.
No, no, I'm saying the algorithm of Instagram,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's just learning models too. Yeah.
Like but generally, like how would you do that? Like I feel like there probably are ways to make social media be like equally engaging, but much healthier and like better epistemics, better everything. But it's just like a difficult
Mm-hmm.
um like um
Right. It's,
yeah.
I mean, there, genetic engineering, I feel like, I mean, that concept is a bit queasy, just, I guess, because of, I mean, personally, I hear genetic engineering, I think Nazis, which is like, I know it's not that, but it is, I guess, I mean, there is a taboo around it, which is an interesting thing to question as well, which is why, why, I guess. I guess by your logic, humans are moral, AI isn't. If this is kind of a battle of the humans versus AI, which sounds like sci-fi, but seems to be more and more reality, then I understand the logic. Um, it's interesting.
I mean, I would say more precisely, it's a battle of um humans who want to recklessly make AGI versus
Right,
everyone
right,
else.
right. So it's kind of a human versus human battle. So then if we're framing it in terms of AI, then what's to say that these genetic engineered humans aren't just the same, but like smarter than what is currently on Earth?
That's right. That's an issue. Yeah. Yeah, you could just be accelerating AGI research because you're making a bunch of smart people, many of whom will do
Mm-hmm.
AGI research. I would still basically like I think I'm still actually thinking about that question.
Mm-hmm.
Like how does this actually affect existential risk? But broadly, yeah, I mean there's a few like core intuitions that seem quite true and that are convincing to me. One of them is that getting good outcomes, humans broadly want good outcomes, but getting good outcomes is harder than getting bad outcomes because it's
Mm-hmm.
easier to destroy than to create, roughly speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like, um, and so getting good outcomes is more difficult and therefore is generally more bottlenecked on difficult ideas. Um, it's easier to like design a gun that kills someone than it is to design a cure for cancer
Right.
or design a cure for gunshot wounds. Um, maybe that's not
Interesting.
in a convincing form yet, but I mean that
Well,
is
no,
like one of
it's just, I don't know if there's a final question there. It's just it's not a way I've necessarily thought about this issue. Um, because I think that today AI is very relevant across industries, across fields, and there is a lot of concern about how it's affecting the world now. And I don't know if maybe we're not thinking enough about, well, what is it going to look like later? And I think humans, we can only focus on so much, especially as societies and individuals. And I guess, and what do you think is more, I guess, how can we prepare these systems that we have for something while also handling what is now changing society very rapidly? And we're relatively slow moving compared to a language learning model, which is not the same kind of caliber as a general intelligence. um, but it is a difficult thing that law is grappling with, religion is grappling with, these academia, the education systems are kind of freaking out about students not reading. um, I mean, I don't know if there's one answer, but it's it it's interesting to just think of how can we as a society be handling these issues and then also be concerned about extinction at some point.
uh,
That's
yeah, I'm not going to give an answer to how society should handle all these different issues
sure,
because
sure.
but but yeah, societal attention is a significant issue. I mean, I've thought about this even in the context of reprogenetics versus AI, where um, like to do reprogenetics, ideally, like the right way to do it is to um, have a whole big conversation with society, basically. Like have society should have a big conversation with itself
Right.
about reprogenetics. Um, but as you say, attention is limited, and if it's a if it's a choice between a conversation about AI and in particular AGI and existential risk versus reprogenetics, I would very, very much rather have a conversation about AGI because that's more urgent and much and it's existential, where reprogenetics is only supposed to, at least personally from my perspective,
Right.
is only supposed to be an assistance to that. Yeah, societal attention. I mean, I think maybe I want to like push back on the idea of society having that much of an attentional bottleneck, or at least I'm very curious about it. Like I'm curious to see how it has a bottleneck and how it doesn't, because
Hmm.
there's a lot of people. There's a whole lot of like there's academics working on any sort of topic. There's many, many regulators who can do research about many different topics.
Hmm.
So, and then like there's a huge social media landscape with a huge variety of people writing or like making video essays about anything under the sun. So I don't know where like in any given person, there's definitely quite a big
Right.
attentional like where it's like what's on your like what are your shower thoughts or like what comes to mind on a quiet walk. That might be like one thing per month. Like in any given month, you have one thing.
Right.
Um,
I guess I guess where I see it is, I mean, there's there's a lot out there now of how to slow down development of AGI and petitions and proposed legislation in Europe. But yeah, I guess there is something that feels almost, you know, I think it's changing very quickly, the priorities. I think that, maybe a year ago this was sort of a much lower down the totem pole of what, society should be petitioning or putting forth legislation, and I think it's actually kind of growing. And now we see it in global politics, of course. Um, but I guess it's a yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting because I do think it has started with people who are very much involved in AI development, sort of sounding alarms about what this could look like, which is concerning if it's people who are considered experts in this that are the most concerned. That's always, I think, a red flag, in terms of trying to convince general systems or audiences that it's a big deal. uh, so um,
yeah, I mean, I think a number of different things have been going on. Like partly there's just like the very obvious like um, thing of like chatbots in the past couple of years becoming like wildly popular things that people use, and that's like
mhm.
uh, maybe two orders of magnitude. I'm not sure, like at least one, probably more orders of magnitude bigger of an AI product compared to anything before that. Um,
Yeah, definitely.
and then also there's like a gradual kind of cascade of people being more willing to express serious worries. Where I mean, this has been going on for more than a decade. Where like I like coming into this space a decade ago, I was already hearing stories from people who knew academics around the AI space saying, I've been worried about this, but I thought I would sound crazy if I talked about this. Then, after 2 years of being in the same office as
Mhm.
this other guy, eventually we just realized that we had both felt that way for a year. Um, like people are just, it's just a very awkward, yeah, it's an awkward
It's
thing.
kind of
But
like
as you
climate
see,
change. That's sort of like the evolution of climate change. I think people were very worried about it in like the 60s and 70s, and no one had any kind of interest. This is just much faster moving, which is personally what scares me, is that it, we don't have the same timeline. as we have in other types of worries, I guess.
It's also it's faster, and it's also much less. It's potentially much less continuous. This is like a this is a point of technical contention, but at least from my perspective, it's very plausible that you don't get warnings. Like with climate change, like the CO2 levels, they don't just like suddenly go up by 100 parts per million. They like always go up by they could go up faster, and there could even be like runaway cascades of like the ice caps melt so they don't reflect as much sunlight and you get warmer, whatever. But like generally, there's lots of continuous variables that you can keep measuring and see the lines going up. With AI, um, you could definitely get very, very quickly or extremely quickly runaway feedback loops where the AI is doing AI research, doing software engineering, like it already does software engineering. It could get better at doing that. It could get good at doing actual AI research. Um, no one, you can't, no one could even argue convincingly, or I could argue convincing. I think I could argue convincingly that we don't know if AI will not. We couldn't rule out AI going from very, very subhuman to very, very superhuman over the course of a month, a week, a day, an hour, even. We can't even rule that out because the fundamental limits are not very limiting. It's like the computer cycle speed and whatnot.
Mm.
Like
So this is why it's probably hard to predict when this is all going to happen. I think that that's a
you
question.
might not get any you might not get any more warning than you already have. Yeah.
Right. So in your idea, when would this AGI, when would general intelligence be online, I guess?
Like you're asking me to actually predict, or
I mean, do you have if you don't have a prediction?
it's very, very hard to tell. I think no one knows. I think I even I have like relatively longer predictions than some people around the space, mainly just because I'm updating less on um, large language models. I think no one has any idea, basically. It could be 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 50 years.
Is
I think
slowing
no
it
one knows.
down an option?
Slowing down the AI
A,
self-improving or slowing down the research.
the research, essentially,
Um,
or all of the above.
I think it's easy. I think it's much easier to slow it down when it's humans because you can like tell them not to do it.
Right.
If it's AI is doing the research, then um, the like basically the issue to me is that there's how can I put this? I'm trying to think of an analogy. Okay, I'm just going to say the abstract thing and tell me if it makes sense. If you have a um, like you can set the rate. Let's just make up say that there's some abstraction which is the rate of AI research, AI doing research on how to improve itself.
Mm-hmm.
And suppose that this rate, the rate of research, whatever that is, suppose you can set that to be a number that is could be very widely varying. Like it could be zero point 0.1, or it could be 1, or it could be 10, or it could be 100, or 1,000. Like there's many orders of magnitude difference in how where you could set that number.
Mm-hmm.
And now suppose you're like trying to make your AI system do something really powerful. Like I want to cure cancer with my AI system, but I don't want to destroy the world with a recursively self-improving AI that becomes stronger than all of humanity within 1 day. I don't want to do that, but I do want to cure cancer. So there's like AIs smart enough to just take over and kill everyone, and then there's AIs who are too dumb to cure cancer. And then in between here, there's the safe zone of like
Mm-hmm.
doesn't take over the world, but does cure cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And now you can set this rate of how fast your AI can self-improve. You can set it here or here or here or here. And you're trying to like shoot your AI so that it self-improves, and then you catch it here and you say, okay, stop self-improving and now cure cancer. Um, but this number can be like zero point 0.1 or 100 or a million. It's like a huge range. And also you can't really tell what's happening. You don't know how smart it is. All you can like test it on various tasks, but it could pretend to be bad at the tasks. It could be very, very good at tasks that you're not testing for.
Hmm.
It could be like internally, like very having all sorts of like extremely sophisticated, fast thoughts, but just not for whatever reason, not deciding or not able to fold laundry well. But
Hmm.
it's like doing extremely advanced mathematics and figuring out how to hack all your computer systems or something.
So
It
it's
could be
like a
doing it.
lottery of what you're getting almost.
Yeah, you have no, we have very like currently and probably in the future we will continue to have very little insight into what's going on in these AIs, what they're thinking, what they're trying to do, and how good they are at doing things, or how good they will be with one more day of training or runtime. So yeah, it's a lottery of like even just how powerful your AI gets, if, especially if it's self-improving, where a small difference could like compound or
Mhm.
explode. Yeah.
So we're basically just building this black box intelligence that could have any outcome at any point. It seems.
Yep.
Great. Well, um, that's interesting. So what I guess what can we be positive about with it? Or how, I guess how can how can we as I don't know, whoever's listening to this or me be positive about it, or what could you kind of practically do? Because it does seem that AI development is sort of happening in this far off area land somewhere in California where there's just people making decisions that seem to affect humanity that most people have no, control over or involvement in.
Um, well, the current tools are pretty cool. Um, so you can think of cool things to do with the current tools. Um, the how to feel positive about AI. I mean, like I was saying, I don't think it is hopeless in that, I mean, you can literally like write your write or call write to or call your representative and be like, I would like to see, I would like you, I would support you coordinating on to support
Mm-hmm.
regulation aimed at preventing people from making the most dangerous, like runaway explosive AI systems. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it's hard to tell whether that would work or what would need to go into it, but support for that is definitely a good thing. And it could work. I wouldn't strongly rule it out. I mean, I mean, basically, I would also say like figure out a way to be excited about what's cool about AI without egging on people to do more AI research. This is a bit of an awkward. I don't know how to ask this, or I don't know exactly what I'm asking,
Mm-hmm.
but like,
Interesting.
yeah, like, um, it is cool and it is useful, but also I don't want people to make more of it. It's a weird,
Right.
yeah.
Well, it's interesting because it does also feel like it feeds into this idea of, well, if it's helping me, if it's kind of helping me in efficiency or do this task faster, or it's going to be smarter or help. Of course there's, science, and sort of maybe it can solve like complex geopolitical logic issues that we can just input all this data and it'll give us an answer. Then why wouldn't we make it better and faster and smarter if it can kind of solve these very real world problems? And I think that that is a very positive part of it. Like, maybe hopefully it could solve some geopolitical issue if, you know, but it does, the lottery aspect of it almost feels that the risk is it worth the reward of what, like, what is like temporary world peace and then we get dominated by AGI. Um,
Right.
so, yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird scenario. It's not like a normally you're like, if something is, if a medium version of something is medium good, then a big version of the thing is big good. Yeah.
Right. Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's a, like an analogy is like it's a nuclear pile. If you have a small nuclear pile, it doesn't really do much. If you have a medium nuclear pile, you can get nuclear power. If you have a big nuclear pile, it melts down or explodes and kills
Right.
everyone.
Yeah, I was thinking about AI development in the context of nuclear deterrence, where I think there is of course fears of, other countries developing, like if let's say we, slow down development or Europe slows down development, why are we to think China or Russia would do that? And is it the same AGI? If AGI is built in China or AGI is built here, it's seems to be the same problem, right?
Well, some problems would be different, and then at the end, everyone dies for the same reason. Yeah.
Right.
Like maybe we would be better or worse at not abusing AI for uh, like military uses.
Hmm.
So that could happen. But then at the end, yeah, if someone actually makes AGI, then everyone dies.
Right.
I also am not actually sure it's the case. I don't know about Russia, but I heard rumors or ambiguous statements from China that they would be potentially on board with an international ban on like the most dangerous AI research.
Hmm.
So I feel like there's already like a significant degree of like basically disinformation, or sort of like mimetic warfare going on from like the AI companies or people in that orbit somehow, like socially or mimetically in that orbit, where people want to keep racing. Some people want to keep racing, and and it's not that hard to sustain a race if you want to sustain a race by um,
Continuing the competition.
yeah, like and you can meme competition into existence. Like you can just say China's going to do this, so I'm going to keep doing
Right.
it, and then
Right.
you are actually continuing to do it, and that causes China to actually continue doing it because you decided to unilaterally keep doing it
Right.
in reality.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I guess if this I mean, if the stakes are it's gonna kill all of humanity, then, even countries like China or Russia would be interested in preventing some outcome like that.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I guess if you put it in those terms, why would there be competition? Like what is the competition then?
yeah. It's a competition who can drive to the edge of the cliff fastest.
Right. Or it's also kind of more myopic, which is, well, in the short term, I will have a stronger military or have more money as a
Yeah,
country.
I mean, this goes back to the hope thing, where it's like if you really don't care about, um, you, I think sometimes people do a thing of like double or nothing. Like, I mean, Hitler, like, or the Nazis in general. Like, I think a lot of them like killed themselves, basically, or oh, maybe we're gonna get demonetized. Well, whatever, I'm not monetized. Anyway, you know, at the end of World War II, where
Right.
it's sort of like very from one perspective, the like Nazi like memeplex is highly delusional. Um, like they just actually thought that they could conquer all of Europe and Russia. Um, from another perspective, it's a big gamble, like a big double or nothing, um, where uh, I don't know. I think that you can just like have. Sorry, there's multiple things going on here. One is like okay, one thing is the zero sum thing where
Mhm.
so you know like the concept of zero sum or constant
Yeah.
sum games, yeah.
Right.
Um,
In geopolitics.
mhm.
Right.
Like in very in great generality, any I feel like any situation can be there's this weird like Necker cube ambiguity thing
Mm.
where um, any interpersonal situation or inter entity multiple entity situation can is sort of always both positive sum and also zero sum.
Mm-hmm.
The reason it's always positive sum, it's like even if something is zero sum, it's like okay, a chess game is zero sum. Either
Mm-hmm.
you win and I
Mm-hmm.
lose, or I
Right.
win and you lose, or we draw.
Right.
But if we, it's a little hard to explain. If we only cared about the outcome of the game,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, if we only cared about the points, like normally people play chess because it's fun and interesting or whatever. But if we literally only cared about the points, it would be a huge waste of effort to play the game. Um, if we had the same ELO rating, we may as well just flip a coin and save all the energy and time of actually
Mm-hmm.
playing the game
Right.
if we
Right.
literally only cared about getting the points.
Right.
So in that sense, a zero sum game is actually positive sum because you can just decide to not have the fight.
Right.
Um, then any positive sum game is actually also a zero sum game. The reason for that is okay, so we coordinate and we get more than we could have gotten individually. We like build an amazing sewage system, or we build a company. We start a company together and we make a bunch of money, which we would not have made otherwise, working on our own. But now, once we've made all that money, now there's a zero sum game where it's like, well, how are we dividing it? Is it 50-50,
Mm-hmm.
60-40,
Mm-hmm.
whatever? Um, and so there's always this like choice of orientation where you could decide to be oriented towards the positive sum frame of a situation or the zero sum frame. The positive sum frame is we can work together and make more than we could make, more than twice as much as we could make on our own. And the zero sum is I'll let everyone else do the work or do the minimum amount, and then and while they're doing the work, I'll position myself to get as much as I can. Once we get the either we have like an abundant outcome,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll get more because I was positioned, or or there will be some big disaster, but still I'll be positioned well, and so I'll get more than other people. So it's always advantageous for me to defect and just think about how to position myself to win out in the zero sum, like dividing up the gains thing.
Right. I
And
mean
so,
that's essentially how this bipolarity in global politics plays out. And AI is coming. This now AI tech race is sort of coming into a pre-existing framework that was already some sort of race having to do with weapons. And so it's just the same players, but now there's a new technology. I think that the difference is that it it's less of a there's a control aspect to it. If you have a nuclear weapon, it's your nuclear weapon, and whether or not you use it is sort of the decision of whoever's in charge. So you can sit down with who's in charge and then make a nuclear proliferation agreement and just decide to whatever. But with AI, it's sort of its own almost. It's an I mean it is it's literally an intelligence, and it has its own rules, and so it's not the same kind of the communication. There's now like a third person in the room almost, literally an intelligence, and also sort of the potential of an intelligence.
yeah, yeah, it is totally different.
Right.
That's right. But I mean, I guess like the zero sum frame on this would be something like someone's definitely going to make it, and so I just want to make sure that I get a bigger
Right.
piece of the pie,
Right.
whatever. Like, okay, fine, maybe we'll all die, maybe we won't. If we all die, then I'm not worse off, or maybe I can somehow by being having control of AI, it's like nicer to me or keeps me as a pet. I mean, I don't think that is a realistic outcome, but you could think that. It's like I just assume that I assume that like either like whatever there's some like variable like how dangerous is AGI, like how likely
Mhm.
is it to kill everyone. So unless you think that this variable is set very high, like even if you think there's a 90% chance it kills everyone, if you're really like just wanting to have your own advantage,
Mhm.
um, yeah, if you're taking this like unilateralist, very individualist perspective, then you would say someone's going to make it, and so then we'll either die or not with 90% probability. But I
Mhm.
can be positioned to,
Right.
if we don't all die, I could be positioned to get a lot or a little in the post. Turns out we didn't die outcome. And that is very upsetting to me. I don't know. This is one of those things where I have not yet empathized well enough to interact with someone like that. But
Yeah. I mean,
but I think that's an important puzzle. I think it's an important puzzle to figure out.
yeah. No, it's part of
If that describes people, then what's going on with them? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I mean, I think it might describe Trump in some ways. I mean, why the whole point of us kind of wanting Greenland and and Canada, it sounds it's funny, but the whole point is like it is part of this weird tech battle that feels almost it's at some point kind of confusing why what we're doing. Um which is yeah, I think on all levels, I guess a way to look at it is that there is sort of this now divorce almost between why we're doing what we're doing and what we're doing. It's like kind of we're an autopilot in some way, you know, with the, you know, this race with China to, in the short term, have more natural resources to what, sell more tech and have more billions and have more control over the medical industry or the, military, or have a larger military in some way. um, but it does sort of feel like we're losing the plot of what we're doing, which I guess is sort of reflective of generally AI development. It just seems like we're losing the plot for a short-term gain, which is, yeah, absolutely present, if that's a way to look at it.
Yeah, I guess I feel like I don't even understand. Is the point with Greenland something about nuclear defense or something,
I
or just
mean, I think
territory, or
I think it has to do
just
with like,
incoherent? Or
I don't know. I think it has to do with trying to maximize natural resources that we have as a country,
okay,
in order to have more available resources to build chips for AI. Um, I think it also has a lot. I mean, there's other issues involved, but it just seems to be part of this sort of. I don't know. I don't know if it's even relevant, but I think
yeah, I mean, it does seem somehow related at the
it
level
is.
of
I
like
think it
zero sum orientation.
is. um, yeah. Anyways, well, this is interesting. It always covers so many different topics. But I guess, is there anything else you think is, I don't know, important part of this puzzle that I'm sort of trying to piece together with just random conversations?
Um, I mean, yeah, like, I mean, I think there's some big things that I would talk about more if I had a lot to say. Like they sort of seem important, but I don't know what to say about them. Like for example, related to the hope thing, um, there is like a this is all very conjectural, but I do feel like there's a sense of related to the hope thing. There's okay, people talk about wanting to be part of something bigger. People talk about wanting to have a community. People talk about wanting to have hope. Um, People talk about wanting to have some sort of vision of a good future. Um, I would say that, like, yeah, there's various structures been that are related to the social, like the socio-technological task of
Mm,
having a collective consciousness, which is difficult to talk about because I don't mean something where you don't have individuality or individual perspective, thoughts, desires, pursuits, etc. So I
mhm,
don't mean like a totalizing collective consciousness, and I don't mean anything like um, I don't mean anything that is like supernatural or like non-physical or something. Um, but I mean an easy example to an easy like element of collective consciousness to point at is group epistemics. In other words, collective sense making, or just like sharing information, being able to, as a group, reach consensuses that are correct and not reach consensuses that are incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like, yeah, being able to filter out incorrect information and spread correct information, etc. So that's like a fairly legible element of like collective consciousness, of like, yeah, sharing information and sharing ideas. Then there's like less legible things like um, values, and like people find people where they get along at the level of like a mishmash of norms, habits, values, perspectives, mindsets. Like, how do you interpret events, or how do you like guess versus ask culture, or
Mm-hmm.
liberal versus illiberal, or high decoupling, low decoupling, or vibes based versus um, like reason based. I mean, none of these things actually have to be contradictory necessarily, but there's all these like tendencies, and then there's like values like yeah, I mean, you can just list anything that people like or dislike or want or don't want, and
Mm-hmm.
that could be something that people form communities around. Um, and like, what is a sense of peoplehood, or a sense of shared history, or a sense of a shared destiny?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right. Well,
anyway,
it just
sorry, go
sounds
ahead.
like developing a sense of shared purpose, shared humanity is what a way to strengthen human resolve in some way, or hope for society that can collectivize. I guess what's the through thought?
Well, what I would want, my hope would be that unwise decisions don't happen as much when you are like healthy in a
Mm-hmm.
very like general deep sense, and a necessary, or like a big component of being healthy in the general deep sense is being part of a good collective consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
um, but that are the socio technologies that we have for collective consciousnesses are not doing very well. So the main examples would be religions.
Religion, right?
Any community has some version of this. It is partly instinctive, or it's partly kind of like grows out of instincts, human instincts. But like the more developed forms, not necessarily saying better, but just like in the same way that a like
Mm-hmm.
government institution or something could just have be more developed in the sense of like having more experience dealing with various problems that you have as a
Mm-hmm.
government institution, and therefore having better systems or better
Mm-hmm.
information about how to do that well. Cultures or other sorts of communities, or groups of people or whatever, have all these strains of like social technologies that are supposed to, like, I mean, we both have a Jewish background, so
Mm-hmm.
there's all this technology for like what do you do when someone in your family dies? How do you support other people when someone
Mm-hmm.
from their family dies? Um, Different points in your life, different obligations and responsibilities, different
Traditions. Yeah.
yeah, traditions, norms,
Right.
rituals, support structures, social roles, all these things. Um, but it's not just that. Like, those are sort of like flowing out of deeper like attitudes of like, um, you know,
Yeah.
what's your
Well,
mission? What's your mission from God, or what's
right. Commitment to some higher power in some way, or higher structure, at least.
yeah. And I interpret I this is like a sort of syncretic or uh, external interpretation or something, but like I interpret a lot of that, a lot of like explicitly like religious or theological things as being about, in a certain way, being about both developing and also trying to be in line with a good collective consciousness, like a
Mhm.
deeply good current and future collective consciousness for some group of people or all of humanity or something. So
Mhm.
bringing that back to AI, yeah. So like this is like this is one kind of idea that I would that I that's like a hypothesis in my head for if there's a through line to or if the, yeah if there's a through line to various particular like we can say all sorts of particular ways that we could try to make society healthier, try to like don't don't socially reward people for doing research that might kill everyone, or give people alternative pathways to get their needs met without doing research that might kill everyone, or
Mhm.
coordinate to have some sort of bright line about what research is acceptable or not, or when we're going to stop, or how to do international treaties, all this, or like how to have the political will to do that, all this kind of stuff. If I was trying to, one hypothesis for like a root cause of why we're maybe failing to meet the challenge fast enough and how maybe how we could do better is to have yeah a more hopeful, more healthy um, collective consciousness. This is a very speculative and very difficult thing to fix, even if it were true. But
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, I think what I was trying to say earlier is that I mean, I think that I think it's a beautiful image of society, and it's one I think that I also hope for. I think is possible, and I think it kind of depends on, you know, individuals desiring that too. But it does feel, at least for me, that, you know, the people who are making decisions about its development and its growth, it just feels like there is this a gap in some way between creating a healthy collective consciousness generally, or in communities that are manageable, and then people who are making decisions about whether or not it's developed. Do do you get what I'm saying? Sometimes it feels like there is a disconnect, although you know, ultimately they're all just, like you said, individuals who have their own personal reasons why they are moving towards or wanting to be involved in the tech world in some way.
yeah, I think like any one of us from the outside, any individual, me or you, we would have very very little influence over what those other individuals are doing. But I would say that as large groups, we
Right.
probably do have quite a lot of influence. Like
Right.
people really do want. So from the reprogenetic side, um, I meet a lot of resistance from biologists, and one reaction that one can have, like biologists don't want to talk, often don't want to talk about this, don't want to talk about reprogenetics, and one reaction that someone could have to their reaction is, oh, they're just cowards, or they're idiots, or they are sheep. Um, my perspective is something like, actually, it's kind of basically correct for them to be mostly morally deferent,
Mhm.
meaning if there's some big moral question, like, should we develop reprogenetic technology? And then, like, a lot of people are saying, oh, this is really bad, or this seems maybe really bad, or I don't like this, or I'm not sure, but a lot of other people say this is bad. If there's this general cloud of it being bad or seems bad or something, and you're a scientist and you could just as well do research on something else, it's basically correct for you to defer to the like apparent current consensus, because if you're not going to do a big evaluation, we actually like form your own opinions from first principles and like investigate all the reasons that people might be worried or think that it might be bad or whatever. If you're not going to do that, it's like much safer. It's like better probably usually to morally defer. Like maybe you
Right.
don't even maybe because it could because people's like knee-jerk intuitions about what's good to do can be wildly different
Mhm.
person to person, and
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
it's as a mechanism for like avoiding people just doing bad things because they happen to not have the intuitions that it was bad. We try to have like norms and approximate consensuses.
Mhm.
So now I don't feel so bad about biologists not wanting to talk about it, and I view it as more like something like it's a responsibility I could take on of like doing a whole bunch of work to clarify the reasons that people are worried and like
Mhm.
whatever. It's a whole longer conversation you want to have. Anyway, so what I was trying to get to was similarly, I think that even people who are working on AI today, I think if there was a very broad, very loud, clear consensus that this is bad research, I think a lot of them would avoid it, and especially
Mhm.
like newcomers would be pretty strongly pushed to not go into it. That would be far from like a blanket solution or like a total solution, but I think it can be quite a strong effect. In other words, so when you're asking like, well, we don't really, there's just these other people in California who are doing this unilaterally. I don't, I think I basically don't buy that, and
Mhm.
I and furthermore, like it's not just like a social censoring thing where it's like how mad should we be at them or something. That's like
Right.
part of it, but it's also like can we be a better community for them?
Right.
For example, that's what I was trying to gesture at with the thing about like a smart kid who didn't um,
Yeah.
didn't have a didn't fit in that well or find
Mhm.
their niche very well. Um, like we could be better for them, and
Mhm.
being able to be better for them requires empathy,
Yeah.
and requires like when you have an ideological enemy, it's very common to like rehearse your disgust for them or something. Like
Mhm.
um, MAGAs will rehearse their disgust for non-MAGAs and vice versa. Um, Empathy is much harder, and like you might not like what you see at first, um,
Mhm.
from any group to any other group.
Mhm.
Um, but at least in my experience, there is kind of like a valley, like a you start off here being just like polite and civil, and that's fine. You can just be polite and civil with someone. You don't need to like get why they're doing what they're doing or relate to them or care what they think of you or anything. Then you like care about someone somewhat deeply and know something about them, and that brings to the fore significant disagreements or mismatches. And then if you stick with it and try harder, sometimes you get across and you really get what's going on with them and you see how what they were doing was coming from love
Mhm.
or good intentions or wanting to be productive, wanting to be helpful, generally like wanting good things for everyone involved and like not just trying to trick you or exploit you or something. Um,
Mhm.
and then it makes more sense and you can like figure out how to do good things together. But it requires a bunch of work, and so
Mhm.
I would that's like one thing where a very healthy, wise, strong collective consciousness would have more um,
Mhm.
would want to put more energy into that task and then would be better at doing it.
Mhm. Interesting. It sounds like maybe what the solution is just robust therapy. Maybe in
Yeah, I
some way.
mean, but the thing is, I think therapy is
Or community. Yeah, by
yeah,
collective consciousness, I mean, I it's a fascinating word. I've been reading a lot about collective consciousness from kind of a more Jungian perspective, but it seems you're using it in a very in a less subconscious way, or maybe maybe not.
yeah. I don't think I'm using it the same way as Jung. There's some overlap probably, but yeah.
But a collective conscious group of of a society essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, what is the Jewish community, or what is the Jewish
Right.
world, or something?
Right. Just a
Um,
connected group of consciousness of with its long-standing tradition, I guess.
I mean, it's also like a huge tradition of like reflection and critique, for
Right.
example,
Right.
and a huge body of like social technology for things. which
Mm-hmm.
is like related to this related to the tradition of critique and
Mm-hmm.
thinking through ideas and
Mm-hmm.
having principles that clash with each other and yeah.
And
Um,
having sort of conscious vigilance of why we're doing what we're doing, and ensuring that there is a sort of a refinement of our processes in a regular way, um, which I think gets to your concept of deference, which is, sure, we defer to experts, as you know, as a Jewish community, we defer to experts on some concepts, but there is sort of a almost a individual obligation to have some purpose, to understand the purpose of your commitments or your actions in the world, if I understand your idea of deference correctly.
um,
Like, you
yeah,
defer
well,
on some things but not on other things, and there's a conscious effort to not defer on certain things.
yeah, I think like I would kind of generally say like on any given thing, it's less deference is always better, but um, first of all, you have to defer about most things just because the world is really, really big and everything is complicated. The world's complicated, people are complicated, you yourself are complicated, the community is complicated, relationships are complicated, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to defer about most things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and furthermore, even if you decide to take more responsibility, take more um, like authority over some question or some domain of inquiry or domain of your life, where you would therefore naturally start deferring less, relatively speaking, even in that case, there's often like sort of surprising, it's can often can be surprisingly wise to defer more than you might naively expect. Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, basically, I think I'm probably largely just saying Chesterton's fence arguments. You know this thing?
I don't think so.
Oh, so Chesterton was probably a Christian guy. I'm not sure. So his idea is like you come to a fence and you want to tear it down because whatever you want to expand your grazing area or something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you should maybe not tear it down until you know why it was put up in the first place. Um, because
Mm-hmm.
someone put it there, they had a reason. You don't know the reason. Just because you don't see a reason immediately doesn't like the fact that someone put it there means that there was a good reason, and if you don't know the reason, that means there's a good reason you're not aware of, basically. And so like a social norm, there's like professionalism, employee employer professionalism in new spaces like techie spaces and cultural experimentation spaces. Often people are like professionalism, that's dumb. Like
Mm-hmm.
why are we having all this like stupid formality? We can
Mm-hmm.
just like communicate
Mm-hmm.
more directly. But then you like get into awkward things where like the boss says something kind of rude to the employee, and from the boss's perspective, we're just chums, and from the employee's perspective, it's like I think we're chums, but also maybe my boss is like trying to dominate me or something, and I better like pretend to be okay with this, and
Mm-hmm.
that can snowball into bad relationship, whatever. All sorts of
Mm-hmm.
bad stuff can happen, and it's like, oh, I guess maybe we should have just deferred to like the normal way of having employee employer relationships, even though we didn't understand why. Um, and then there's all sorts of things like that at all sorts of levels and in all
Mm-hmm.
sorts of domains. Yeah.
So I guess how would this apply to AI, if at all, or AI development, or does it?
I don't know if it applies directly. Well, I, the way it's a little indirect the way it applies. I mean, what I would like is for people to, I would like for the, I would like the global community of people who are thinking about these things to think more about AI risk and realize that it's a huge risk and is not worth the gigantic risk of destroying all of humanity. And then I would like AI researchers to defer to that, even
Mm-hmm.
if they don't agree with it themselves, and then not do AGI research.
I see.
Um, but there's a question of like, should they defer or not?
Mm-hmm.
And it's they only should defer if it's a good community.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a bad community, if it's a like you can think of like large communities like states or cultures or
Mm-hmm.
whatever that are not that good, where it's like if you could defer to their norms, but their norms are like repressive to some group or shut out some type of thinking or whatever, where it's not good for you to defer to them. It's not good for a smart kid to in when they're in school. It's not good for them to defer to what their teacher is telling them to think about because the teacher
Mm-hmm.
actually does not know what's good for them to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so if there's a community that is not able to empathize with some member of the community, that creates a bunch of bad things where it's like that member has to
Mm-hmm.
change the community or get banished or banish themselves
Mm-hmm.
and not be participating in that collective consciousness and therefore not have an especially good reason to defer
Mm-hmm.
and also not have so it's like not having faith in like the core thing is not having faith in some group in some collective consciousness that you're a part of. One consequence of that is you don't actually have a good reason to defer about some opinion about this research being dangerous or whatever. And then also you may feel you would not have hope in the future being good because the way that you would have hope in the future being good is we're all on the same team and we're all working
Right.
towards progress, tikkun olam, whatever. Yeah.
So right. So this kind of solution, just to frame this whole concept, is to essentially, fortify a collective consciousness that is based in empathy for people who are literally the ones, working on this development in order for them to have trust and hope to defer uh, to a structure that is essentially hoping that they won't develop something that will kill all of humanity, and to give them a sense of hope and community, which is, in some ways revolutionary, in some ways, kind of obvious that, when you have hope and purpose for a collective concept of humanity, you don't want to create something that, will kill everyone. It's almost obvious to say, but I don't think it's a framing that I've necessarily thought about, or most people have thought about in terms of AI development. Um, so I think it's a very valuable perspective for sure.
And just to say it again, I think it's very challenging. So it's understandable that it's or that that would be the fact that it's challenging would be one good reason that it's not how people normally think of the situation. In particular, it's challenging to. I mean, it's sort of like a parent. I don't actually have kids. I would like to have kids, but I don't have kids. But I've been a kid with parents. And like it can be challenge like the parents. The parent loves the child, but the child can do very bad things.
Hmm.
And what do you do? Like it's not acceptable for the child to do that, but also you still love them, and you don't want to banish them from the parent-child relationship, but you don't want to accept their behavior.
Hmm.
So you're trying to accept them, but not accept the behavior. And they might even be thinking of the bad behavior as being part of them. And so if you accept them, you kind of are accepting the behavior, but you don't want to do that. But
Hmm.
there's not immediately good options like
Hmm.
necessarily. And it can just there doesn't even have to be any good options necessarily. But like if there were good options, it would probably require non. You can't just decide that some behavior is bad and then say it's bad. That can be a helpful thing, but it is very much not enough. And sometimes people will. Sorry, I'm talking around. An example I have in my head is Elon Musk. I don't know
Right.
what's going on with Elon, but like, I guess to be honest, I feel like I and probably a lot of other people have in the past had like grief about him in particular because it's like
Hmm.
he's like this amazing tech guy um, doing all this amazing stuff, which is still amazing. Um, but then also there's some kind of thing I don't understand going on socially and politically with him. Um,
Right.
and I like, I don't want to victim blame or whatever, but like, could guess that, or a piece of a hypothesis about what's going on there is that, I don't know. Sorry, I have all this crosstalk in my head where if I say one thing, then the opposite side of whatever. Basically, I'm just saying like, I feel like people uh, may. I would want people to somehow be able to be critical of people while leaving genuine lines of retreat and while also not being deluded about how much power you like.
Well, yeah, I mean,
The son can just be upset and then storm out of the house forever. That's a
yeah.
thing that could happen.
Right. Well, there's like there's a line between being concerned for like humanity's sake from an empathetic point of view and also just attacking the person for being just like a bad person. With Elon's case, I think because he's so, powerful and successful and rich, people have no problem just attacking him. But I agree, there's obviously something fundamentally like psychologically going on with him. Um, that doesn't, but I guess it gets into the question of, is he a bad person? Well, what does it mean to be a bad person? Are people fundamentally good and could at some point listen to some, empathetic plea, or is that not a given? um I mean, I think what I find kind of almost intangible about this solution that you've, articulated is who is part of this community. I assume it's just other people who can relate in some way, who are, people like yourself in a way, where it's like you understand that world, but you have this more empathetic perspective of the whole thing, and I assume hope for humanity. um I think Elon is sort of a different caliber, because when you are this wealthy and powerful, it kind of is like a snowball effect in what you're able to. Well, why can't I just move to Mars? It's, well, in theory, financially, you could move to Mars. So if you get someone who has the technological mind for it and the money and kind of is a little bit insane, then you get Elon Musk. I don't know if that necessarily describes people working at, OpenAI or some other um, like firm.
I mean, I think what I'm trying to say is something like, yeah, obviously there's a huge amount of power from wealth and control over technology and and or political things. Um, but also, I'm saying, well, my okay, this is all. I'm very uncertain about all this, but I would say like a strain of hypotheses about Elon in particular, but also about like other similar people, um, is that a lot of the core issue is it is more about this like rejection thing,
Mm.
or like it is more about the community thing, um, or in other words, maybe I don't want to say we, but some hypothetical possible humane collectivity would have power. I don't even want to say power over him. I'm just trying to say like,
Can speak to him in some way.
I mean, I want to. It's like conceptually incorrect. I want to say like has Elon as a part of it naturally, just because he's
Mm.
like a human.
Right.
Um, yeah, I feel like my concepts don't work here. Like, partly what I'm trying to say is like it doesn't. I mean, a parent wouldn't. How would a parent think about a child? Like a parent wouldn't. It's not like.
Well, they're not hateful to the child specifically. I mean, in some ways, what it sounds like to me is that it's sort of about, you know, a lot of the people involved here, there is this rejection aspect of who they are, and that's kind of why they're in these positions or have the intelligence is their intelligence is also part of their, you know, experience of being, kind of a different, I guess, as a kid. And it almost feels like there is like this inner child that is kind of in all of this world that is what is sort of, you know, broken in some way. It's like kind of this
Yeah, that's true. But okay, here one thing that I was struggling with that now I think I have a bit more to say about is there's a tendency to have an asymmetric picture where the correct thing is a little bit more symmetrical, but it's confusing because you can't just be naively symmetrical. So let me explain what I mean. If a parent and a child are having like a really deep disagreement that could like break up their relationship, um, like often what might be happening is that the parent actually needs to compromise, give up ground,
Mhm.
negotiate. Um, um, like it's collective ownership, right? Like the thing a collective consciousness is supposed to be, according to me, like collective ownership, which would include even like the outcast. Like it's not like us
Mhm.
here with the collective consciousness and then you, the outcast over there, who don't get a say in us. It's we're trying to make a new thing, which is both groups
Right.
mushed together with shared ownership, so to speak. Um, hold on one sec. There's another thing.
Well, in theory, the
But
collective consciousness always included everyone. There's no other.
that's right.
Yeah.
But then furthermore, it's like confusing because you can't just be naively symmetric because sometimes one person's wrong and the other person's right or something. Um, so so it's a yeah, it's a difficult tightrope. It's a narrow bridge, as it were, because you need to you I want to give you more stake in the collective thing.
Mm.
And this is vulnerable for me, even if I have more power in one or another sense, because I am giving up some of my values, sort of, or I'm exposing myself to take on board some of your values, like giving you a say in whatever manner.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's also vulnerable for me. And then there's like, well, it's just more difficult to negotiate. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
uh, like because it's more vulnerable, I need to be very picky about, like, I'm not going to just let you have whatever say you want. But if I start restricting what sort of say you have, now I'm very, very much at risk of shutting you out and pushing you out and making you be an outcast or incentivizing you to start your own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Interesting.
yeah.
Right. No, I see. I understand. I think it's just a fascinating way to view the problem. I think it's powerful. And I appreciate the perspective. I have to say it does reflect, I guess, the way I see society generally, in terms of the important. I mean, if I understand the importance of having some kind of purpose and collective vision, um, as a way to maintain hope or positivity in some way. Um, so if I think, yeah, it's if it can be applicable, I guess, in a more localized way, then that could be a answer, I guess. Sometimes this feels very vague and yet also very specific at the same time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't I don't really have any more questions. So, if you have anything else to add, I guess, to this long meandering conversation.
Um, no, yeah, I think that's a good place to put it to rest for the
Yeah.
time being. Yeah, it was fun. Thanks for
It was
the
fun.
chat.
Yeah, it was interesting. Uh covered a lot of ground, and I hope maybe um refined something or consolidated into, I don't know, some answer to this. But I appreciate you taking the time,
Mhm.
and yeah, it was a great conversation.
Yeah, happy to talk, and thanks for the, yeah, thanks.